All right, seventh grade. So today, for Tuesday, April the 28th, we are talking about cube roots. Cube roots are essentially an extension of square roots. Now, we've talked about square roots, the idea that the square root of 64 is 8, because 8 times 8 is 64. When we're trying to find cube roots, and this is going to be part of your assignment today, you're going to get something that looks like this. Oh, I forgot my little 3 there. A cube root is essentially the number multiplied by itself out 3 times. So like, for example, if I was to say, well, 8 times 8 is 64, and 64 times 8 is 512, I would say that the cube root of 512 is 8, because 8 times 8 times 8 is 512. So for 64, we're looking for the number that multiplied out 3 times equals 64. So how do I do that? Well, some of you have this same calculator. So let's kind of focus here. First of all, I'm going to plug in the number 64. So I'm going to come over here, 64. Then I'm going to come over here to my second function. That's like my shift button on the computer. I want to get something different. And so then I'm going to go to my square, not my square root button, my exponent button here. And there I see that I want something, that x with the y. So I'm going to press that button there. All right, then I'm going to enter, well, what do I want? Do I want it to the fourth? Do I want it to the third? Well, I want cube, which is 3. So I'm going to press the 3 button now. All right, then I'm going to press equals, and it comes out with 4. The cube root of 64 is 4. And sure enough, if I think about it, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. So we can do the same thing with negative numbers here. So I'm going to go back. I got negative 343. So 343 negative. I see that in my calculator. All right. Then once again, I'm going to press second function. I'm going to come over here to my cube root button on the second function, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to press that. I want the cube root again, so I'm going to press 3. All right. Then I'm going to press equals. And I'm going to get negative 7. Sure enough, negative 7 times negative 7 is a positive 49. Positive 49 times negative 7 equals negative 343. So the cube root of negative 343 is negative 7. It's not hard. Simplify the expression. So, well, here we go. This is pretty basic. This is similar to what we've been doing, simplifying the expressions. In this situation, all I do is have to add what these numbers are, okay? And it's the idea when I add these numbers that all I have to do is add the coefficients. So it's really 9 plus 2, and it's just 11 and the cube root of 7. And I can just leave this as the cube root of 7 because 7 is not a perfect cube. That can't be broken down anymore. Now, just for the sake of variety, let's change that plus to a minus. Doesn't change what we do. Still, since we have 3, the cube root of 11 in both of these, I can just do the coefficients, which is 6 minus 4. Okay, 11 cannot be broken down, not a perfect cube. I know that 6 minus 4 is 2, and so I'm going to have 2 and the cube root of 11. That's going to be my final answer. That's not hard. All right, well, here I've got something a little bit different as I go to my other sheet. Here now I've got a number that negative 512 actually is a perfect cube. So I got to go to my calculator. I'm going to punch in 512 negative, so 5, 1, well, I'm struggling here. Let's clear that. 512 negative. All right, and so then I'm going to come once again, like we talked about, the second function. Then I'm going to come here to my cube root button. All right, I'm going to press that, and since I want the cube root, I'm going to press 3, and that equals negative 8. Man, that makes sense, because negative 8 times negative 8 is a positive 64. 64 times negative 8 is a negative 512. So I can kind of think about this and get rid of this. And see now, since a number right next to that I know kind of means multiplication, really it's 8 times a negative 8. Well, The order of operations tells me I need to multiply before I add, so 7 times negative 8 is negative 56. Negative 56 plus 8 equals a negative 48. And that's how I do that. Not hard, not bad. I can handle that. Well, you're going to have another section on your assignment, 7th grade, that's going to give you a couple of numbers, and you're just going to have to determine which one the greater number is. The assignment is going to have to ask you to explain. You don't need to explain. You just list the greater number. Well, 2.5 is pretty self-explanatory. I understand that value. What I don't know is the cube root of 21. Now, what I do know is that 21 is not a perfect cube, but I need to at least see what it is. So I'm going to punch in my 21. I'm going to go up to my second function button. Then I'm going to press my cube root button again. Press 3 for the cube root, and I get 2.75892. The number they give me is 2.5. I see that my first two numbers are 2.7. So clearly, even though it's not exactly 2.7, it's an irrational number because there's no pattern and it doesn't terminate. But clearly I can see that that's the bigger number because that spits out a 2.7, and this is only 2.5. So we look at this one. Now we have 4.25. That's pretty self-explanatory. I understand the value of that. What I don't know is the cube root of 100. It's not a perfect cube. All right, there's not three numbers, this times this times this, and it's all the same number that equals 100. So I've got to go to my calculator again. I'm going to punch in 100. Second function, cube root. It's going to be my 3. Then I'm going to press equals. And it tells me that it's 4.6. All right, so I'm going to come over here, and I see that that is 4.6. Well, that tells me that's a 6. That's a 2. This has to be greater. The cube root of 100. That has to be the greater number. All right? So I'm going to look at one more, okay? And I want you to, it's going to say something like this, all right? The volume of a cube is 343 cubic millimeters. What is the surface area? Well, this problem assumes a couple things. And as I've said before, when problems assume things, it means that you have to use information that you already know from previous grades or from previous chapters or whatever. So, the volume of a cube is 343 cubic meters. What is the surface area? Well, the first thing that a problem like this assumes is that you understand that a cube is a rectangular prism. And since it's a cube, the length, the width, and the height are all the same. All right? And it assumes that you remembered that to define the volume of a rectangular prism, its volume equals length times width times height. Now, since it's a cube, it means the length, the width, and the height are all the same. These all three numbers are going to be the same. So essentially then, really what I need to find is the cube root of 343. So we're going to go to our calculator, and we're going to punch in 343. Second function, that cube root button, 3 equals 7. All right, well, that works pretty good. That tells me that my length is 7, my width is 7, and my height is 7 for that particular cube. But the question is asking me, what is the surface area? So this question also implies or assumes that you understand what surface area is. Surface area, remember, Mr. Swack always relates that to like a birthday present or a Christmas present that you wrap with wrapping paper. If you were to have the exact amount of wrapping paper that you need, how much wrapping paper would you need? Well, I know I have a cube. A cube has 6 sides. Since it's a cube, all 6 sides are the same. None of the rectangular or square sides are different. They're all the same because it's a cube. Well, to find the area of the square, remember what I do. I take the length of one of the sides, which I know is 7, and square it. So I do 7 times 7, and I get 49. The area of one of the cubes is 49 square millimeters. But it's a cube, which means I have 6 sides. So I actually need to go and do 49 times 6. Well, 6 times 9 is 54. Put the 4 down, carry the 5. 6 times 4 is 24, plus the 5 is 29. I see that my surface area is 294 square millimeters. That is what you're doing with cube roots. All right. Have a good time, 7th grade. We'll talk to you later.